Once again, it's going down. And on today's episode, I'm asking you about Peaches from Snowfall and Bubbles from The Wire. Now, I'm going to give you my synopsis of both of these characters, which I thought were played very well by the actors in their respective shows. But the question that I have for today's episode is this: who was the better hustler between the two, Peaches or Bubbles? Let me make my argument on today's show. Now, before I get into it, let me say bless up to everyone who watched my last 3 episodes. The interaction, the thoughts, the theories, the comments have been just very, very enjoyable, mind-blowing, as well as thought-provoking. Guys and girls, y'all keep it up. So let's get into today's episode and let me break down both of these characters and how I view them. And let's talk about who was the better hustler between Peaches and Bubbles. Let's start with your man Peaches, the younger of the two. Well, actually, he may be older because he was a war veteran, actually a Vietnam War veteran, if I'm not mistaken. If he was, he should be a little bit older, but I can confirm he was a war veteran. It would be more precise if maybe you said he was back in the 90s, like the Gulf War down in, I believe it was Afghanistan. But nevertheless, he was a veteran who joined up with Franklin Saint to be his muscle. He joined up with him. They were friends before the war. And when he came back home, it's time to put in some work. Now, when we watched the show, Peaches was a man of few words. Okay. He really didn't chime in unless it was something really serious, but he was someone that Franklin could depend on when it came to be his driver and when it came to getting the dirt done on the streets. Now, you can't be in the street and not get your hands dirty. And so that's how he was used in the show. Sometimes he would chime in on family business, whether it was different street business. Again, his words were here and there, kind of like the wind. But when he put that work in, you knew Peaches was about that life. So as they wrote the story, Peaches started sniffling. And I told my wife, I said, I believe Peaches got the package. I believe he got HIV, either from shooting or in them streets with the broads. Who knows? They didn't really talk about it, but they alluded to him having a drug problem or maybe him just being sick. And before you know it, Peaches turned out to be one of the biggest hustlers on the show, because he turns around, as we know, and jacks his homeboy of $5 million. But this is my thing. What does he do with the bread? Does he try to flip it? Does he try to invest it? Does he go and do something productive? No. He goes and smokes up some crack. And by the time we see him at the end of season 6, you know the deal. He's looking bad. He's strung out. And that $5 million is gone. We know at least he bought some property that he later turned into his crack house, and his buddy was in there, and ultimately Franklin puts a cap in him and has only $12,000 to show for his habit. Now, in my mind, I mean, he used Franklin, but I mean, he just straight hustled him. I mean, how else can you put it? He just straight robbed his homeboy. And then that's the end of Peaches. But on the other hand, from The Wire, you got another type hustler that's in the streets. Bubbles was the city or the neighborhood dope fiend. And he was in the streets deep. We know about his background. You know, he was a citizen. He was working a 9 to 5, and then he decides to get that 5-finger discount on a radio, gets busted. Next thing we know, he's got a habit, and he's been doing heroin for years in the street. His running buddy, Johnny, I mean, they just shooting heroin every chance they get. But around season 3, we see Bubbles begins to want to sober up and try to be a productive member of society. So then he begins to earn money snitching. Matter of fact, he turns that into an occupation, and he starts earning bread snitching on the different crews in the city. And Johnny has a problem with it, and he's like, yo, man, we out here making an honest pay, and we not in the streets ripping and running. And then we see him begin to get with Kima, and he decides to really let his hustling skills flourish. He opens up what comes to be to know his own small business, Bubbles Depot. And I mean, come on now, folks. That is just a hustler. He knows how to get his bag. He gets his bread up selling toilet paper to the fiends. When they open up Amsterdam, we see the peak of his business. He's out here selling white teas. He's buying dope wholesale and flipping it. I mean, Bubbles he's a hustler at heart. He's out here picking up cans. He's going to the recycle place and picking up broken down light stands that are made out of aluminum. He's robbing local contractors, taking the copper out of the wall, and he's flipping that. I mean, Bubbles is doing it. So much so he's able to move into a vacant, get him some electricity, take in one of his homeboys that he tries to get back in school, get sober again, gets off the needle, end up selling the Baltimore Sun. I mean, we just see this guy just hustling, trying to do the right thing. Of course, he relapses and goes back to the needle, gets back off, and gets back on these streets hustling for that dollar. And so you got two different types of hustlers in these shows. And my question is, I want to know. I need to know. I gots to know. Who do you think was the better hustler? You know, we know Bubbles ended up hustling and turning his life around, you know, going to some meetings. And Peaches, on the other hand, he hustled his homeboy out of 5 M's, but wasted it away. Does that take away from his hustle game? I'm going to tell you one thing I did learn from these two characters. You know, in life, you got to have a hustle. You know, you can't depend on just one source of income, albeit it needs to be an honest source of income. But I think what the writers, one of the things that I picked up is that, look, you got to have some type of side hustle making you some extra bread. And we see that with Franklin, with the real estate. Then we see it in The Wire. We see Lieutenant Daniels. We see other sergeants having their real estate game. So it's all throughout these shows. And I think that's a message to everyone watching. You got to have more than one stream of income. But needless to say, what we're talking about today is peaches or bubbles. I need to know, who do you consider the better hustler between the two? It's the Parlow Gems Show. I'm your man, Parlow. If you enjoy my content, make sure you subscribe. If you like it, cool. If not, cool. But we gonna be here doing this thing. Let me know down in the comments what y'all think about these two characters. Catch me on my next one. Peace.